Everybody, and welcome to this Corporate and Resources Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Richard Thorpe and I will be chairing the meeting this evening. In the event of an emergency and the sounding of an alarm, the emergency evacuation procedure is to leave the chamber by the fire exits at either end of the room and staircases at either end of the corridor. Please don't use the main staircase. Councillors and officers are asked to congregate by the statue in the marketplace, where it will be absolutely freezing, so I wouldn't hang on. No, we must congregate. Anyone requiring assistance should remain in their seats and an officer will assist you from the building. There is free public Wi-Fi for anybody wishing to follow the agenda tonight on the Council's website. This meeting is being filmed for live broadcast on the Council's website, and an archive version will be available on the website after the meeting finishes. The broadcast will be suspended during any adjournments in the proceedings and should the Council resolve to consider any information as exempt business. Members are reminded that microphones must be switched on and spoken into directly and clearly for the webcast. I will direct any public speakers how to do this when they're called. Please can everyone present in the meeting ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or in silent mode for the duration of this meeting. Those present this evening are members of the committee, and we also have officers present tonight to give an overview of reports and advice during the meeting. So I'll move on to the agenda. Public question time. We've received no questions from members of the public for this evening. On petitions, we've received no petitions for submission this evening. Item 3, apologies for absence and attendance of substitute meetings. Apologies for absence and attendance of substitute meetings members. Sam, are there any apologies or substitutions?
Yes, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillors Kirsch, Manders, Taylin, and Councillor Holt will be substituting this evening.
Declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other registrable or non-registrable interests relevant to the items on the agenda. Any declarations? Oh, good, thank you. Minutes. May I sign the minutes of the meeting of this committee held on 26 September as a correct record? Thank you. I'm going to sign those now. Yeah, thank you. Now, the first substantial item on the agenda, revenue and capital budget monitoring as at month 6, Appendix A. As a reminder, members are to refer to the updated version of the report outlined in the late material pack, which replaces the original version. So just to introduce the item, so this is the revenue and capital budget numbers for the first 6 months of the year, the half-year point in the year. And you'll remember that the budget for this year was set in February, as was the medium-term financial plan. We're now projecting an overspend on the revenue account of 6.31 million, which is significantly down from the deficit that we had projected at month 4, which was 8.47 million. And the intention is to continue to take steps to reduce expenditure in the second half of the year. The detailed explanation of what's been done is available in paragraph 12 of the paper and section C, which sets out the red, amber and green status of those issues. The issues that we're faced are pretty much the same as they were in month 4. The continuing effect of inflation and the trust budget and similar issues earlier in the process. Inflation, which is now easing, but has been quite hard during the year. Funding is down, our demand is up, and there are particular issues still in the 3 issues that are affecting all councils around the country: adult social care, children's social care, and housing. The paper invites us to note the budget and to approve a number of issues. And I will ask Sue if she has anything to add to what I've just said, I should say, before I went any further.
Not really, only to sort of say the committee paper is also asking for 2 approvals in relation to the capital programme. And just to reiterate the positive progress that's been made in terms of trying to mitigate some of the demand and complexity areas, and also activities around trying to bring down the cost of our temporary accommodation linked to our homelessness. The committee report does note a significant underspend on the capital programme, but as noted in the report, that's to do with 3 major projects, and that's just effectively down to the timing of when those activities will be completed. The HRA continues to have a small surplus, which actually is quite unusual in London councils. There's, you know, our current survey of all councils is that the HRA is actually struggling in a lot of councils, so that's good news for us. And the DSG continues to have a deficit for the year, which is again in line with a number of other authorities, and we continue to work with the DFE in terms of how we might be able to mitigate that going forward. I wasn't going to add anything other than that, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments from members or indeed from the public before I move the resolution? Councillor Coogan.
Thank you for that, Chair. I must say, I observed that there's a marked improvement in these papers this time around, so my congratulations to the Section 151 officer. The only thing as I said, the underspend on the capital is welcome, because there are some pressures within my ward, something that's been overhanging for a very long time. So hopefully we can reprioritize some element of that towards that parking for parts of Coombe ward. And regarding the dedicated schools grant budget, the DSG, although we are awaiting the final publication from the new Labour government for next, I think around about December, but I think there is a push to have any deficits to be written off. So hopefully, I know it's going to be sort of Christmas and New Year, but before the full council in February, when we consider the council tax rises or maintenance, as things might be, that we will have a full impact assessment of how all these things that have been announced for social care and children's care and DSG will be factored in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coogan. Any other comments before I move? I will move to the motion next, but go for it, Councillor. It's up to you if you want to. I mean, we will have a debate anyway. Okay, thanks. Right. In which case, now move the recommendations on the front of the report on page A1 of the agenda. Councillor Aflelka, will you second that, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Right now, I'll open the item for debate. And Councillor Bass has already got in there early, so over to you.
Well, I wasn't first, I was second. But thank you, Chair. I've just a comment on the context. It's probably a bit of a pernickety point, but it's saying there's several factors that give room for optimism, such as national insurance contribution cuts and disposal bolstered real disposable income by 1% and mortgage rates beginning to return to normal levels. I think this has all been a bit overturned since the budget.
It has, but those are the factors that affected these 6 months worth of accounts. I agree that the future will look very different, but that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's just, it says gives rooms for optimism. Optimism sort of implies looking forward as opposed to commenting on backwards. That was my comment, really, because it is, optimism is for the future, and for the future it isn't as rosy as it was in the past.
Very political, very quickly. We shall see. Did you want to say something on that?
Yeah, so this paper was written before the budget, and obviously it's at a point in time at the end, so prior to the budget actually being set, which was obviously 2 months after this was written. Okay.
Questions or comments? No. In which case, we can move to the motion and voting. So Is everyone happy to agree to this unanimously? We both to note, but there are also some issues where we do need to formally vote on. What's my bit of the paper? On the here we are. So we're going to note the revenue account, and we're also asked to resolve the reprofile of a number of capital budgets to be approved, which has the effect of decreasing capital budgets by 45.4 million for 24-25, and increasing capital expenditure budgets by 45.4 million over the 3 years from 25-26 to 27-28, and changes in existing capital schemes resulting in budget no longer required of 2.157 million. Are we happy to do all of that? Good, thanks very much. Now, I want to change the order of the agenda so that Sue doesn't have to stay for the whole evening. So if everyone's happy, we'll now move to item 9 on the agenda, which is changes to the council's contract regulations. So I will introduce this item. So this is an issue of changing the regulations, our regulations to come into line with changes in law. And so is there anything you wanted to add to that?
For some time now, we've been expecting to have to introduce the changes from the Procurement Act 2023. That was delayed from October to February for 4 whole months. What this is an update of our constitution, the contract regulations, to update in line with that legislation. So it mainly relates to things like VAT limits and things like that. So other than to update it for legislation, there have been no further changes to the constitution.
Shall we move straight to the resolution? I will now move to the recommendations at the front of the report on page D1 of the agenda. And Councillor Afilaki, you happy to second those? Thank you. So I open this for debate. Anyone want to speak on this one? Councillor Bass.
Sorry, an even more pernickety point. But it is a public paper, so it says last committee reference minute ****. You know, if it's published, we probably should have that filled in. It just looks better.
Yes, we can certainly fix that. Any other comments? Everyone happy just to note that? Thank you. And now we will revert to item 7, which is the Equalities, Diversity and Inclusion Annual Report, including Workforce Equalities Report, which is Appendix B. And Councillor Afilaki will introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to provide an update on the progress that's been made through the Inclusive Kingston strategy. As we know that the Inclusive Kingston strategy and action plan delivery is overseen by the Kingston Leadership Board, and they meet regularly. And this is to address the challenges and monitor the progress and discuss priorities along diversity. So this is to provide an update on the progress that has been made so far. So I will pass this to Paula.
Thank you, Councillor. So this, as Councillor Afilaki said, is a progress and achievements report over the last 12 months against our commitments to the Council's published Inclusive Kingston strategy. So I just want to start by saying that actually this the reported achievements in this are very much the work of many, many officers across the council teams and with partners and communities. This work touches on everything we do, and there are areas of strength and progress, and there are of course areas of improvement. The report also includes an update on the Armed Forces Covenant, the annual summary, and the annual Workforce Equality Report, which provides an overview of the council's efforts in promoting and achieving workforce equality. So just to give a bit of a flavour of some of the things that have been going on over the last year, and as I say, there are a lot. There's been new forums developed. We have a new Kingston Disability Network, which brings together individuals and organisations to create a collective, stronger voice for those with disabilities and raise awareness of the issues, and providing an opportunity to share knowledge, experience, and a platform for engagement. Likewise, we have the Inclusive Kingston Borough Alliance. We have things like we've enhanced our complaints process to include equality monitoring information. So where provided, this can track where complaints are coming from and identify if they're coming from a particular group. There's been many conversations across the year around community cohesion. There's been numerous cultural and heritage events ranging from the visit of King Charles to the Korean community in New Malden, the Celebrating Community Awards, which took place for the first time last year. And last year we celebrated at this very time Kimchi Day for the first time as a borough. We've commemorated the 80th anniversary of D-Day, International Film Festival, etc. We've got lots of progress in developing strategies around tackling violence against women and girls, all-age autism and ADHD, and suicide prevention. And our commitments to being an age-friendly borough, a borough sanctuary, and to treat care experience as a protected characteristic, and a new children and young people's plan created by children and young people, where in there they have a theme of Everyone Matters, which states they want all children and young people to feel valued and included and respected and be able to access services that they need. There's been a lot of work around training for staff on unconscious bias, where we had 663 staff attending, and marked improvement around our inclusive recruitment, diverse panels, supporting the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Scheme, and raising awareness of women's reproductive health. In the Armed Forces Covenant, we supported military families through the Keepability Programme, introduced the Guaranteed Interview Scheme for those from the with Armed Forces experience, and creating stronger links with the British Legion. As I say, that's just it touches the surface really of the content of the report. So what next? We carry on and challenge ourselves to be more inclusive, and we've just started developing our next 4-year strategy. Engagement has opened up on that, and we have an opportunity for people to contribute to that through our Let's Talk digital engagement platform, and also through the inclusive team going out and visiting events and community groups to hear from people so they can identify their priorities and help shape the next plan for the future. All views are very welcome to that, no matter whether you live in the borough, work in the borough, visit the borough. Thank you.
I'll now move the recommendations on the report, which is that we should note the report, and ask Councillor Afilaka to second me. Good, thanks. Any comments or thoughts on this? Councillor Coogan.
Thank you for that. Just want to make a couple of comments, because there are often people in the borough, residents, whose voices are not heard or they somehow become invisible. So on the one hand, I welcome this EDI report, but on the other hand, for example, in temporary accommodation, there are nearly 1,000 kids who underachieve compared to their peers because the places they live in have inadequate washing, laundry, and cooking facilities. I welcome, on the other hand, that as part of the capital program, we're going to start tackling temporary accommodation. But we also have, according to Dr. Barnardo's, nearly 2,000 kids going to bed hungry, even though that was not on our radar. So, and when I asked the question, how many food banks there are in Kingston, nobody could give me that information. So just going forward, wherever we can, if we can have more data and metrics and social values being delivered for the people who's, as I said, who are invisible and whose voices are not heard, we really need to be a bit more proactive and be inclusive, because it's only when you start measuring something you will start tackling them as well. Thank you.
Any further? Councillor Bass.
Yeah, no, thank you for the report and the officers' run through. And you mentioned some some of the events that are supported. I just think it's disappointing that there was one event that I know we certainly enjoyed going to every year when my kids were young, is the Guy Fawkes Night. There always used to be a really big event at the King's Meadow, which all the local families went to. And I know it's really great that we do support all the different cultures and everything that have moved to Kingston and live here. But I think it's a shame if we can't support our traditional events, really. And I know, for example, the annual St George's Day parade for all the guides and scouts in Tolworth was at risk. I'm not sure if that still goes ahead, but it's a great shame that things like the 5th of November Guy Fawkes Nights aren't supported, and Rotary don't feel that they can do it without the support. I wondered if there was any comment on that.
I can help provide an answer on that. From what I understand, it is due to the number of volunteers that Rotary are trying to get and haven't been able to get to put Guy Fawkes on. That is my understanding of the situation.
Well, I spoke to one of the round table people that used to organise the event, and I think their analysis of why they weren't able to hold it is because of the increasing regulations on health and safety and fire regulations and lack of police support. So if there's any way that the council could help in future years, then carry this out, or else it'll be lost forever. And it was, I don't know how many kids in Norbiton and the wider area that walked to it and went to it, but it was a massive event. And it's a shame because once these events are gone, they're gone forever.
Yeah, I mean, if the Rotary feel they're able to continue doing it, we will work alongside to help facilitate them as we have in the past. It's not a council-run event. So in that respect, we're happy to work alongside our voluntary sector in the same way that they run other groups, community groups. So we're happy to talk to them, of course.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to make this a Kings Meadow fireworks meeting, but while we're on the subject, on that, much as it's not a council-run event, and I know that and you know that, the general public don't know that, and the council gets in the neck for the event not happening, and that usually means me. So maybe you and I could take this offline and approach Rotary to get the full ins and outs of why the event isn't happening, and if it's possible that support from the council would help. I've got a feeling it won't, but I don't know the full ins and outs, but I would like to know. Thanks.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Any more questions, comments?
Sorry, just to say that in the 3 years of the inclusive Kingston strategy, there's been a lot of improvement and progress that has been made. And whilst we know that there are still a lot of things to be done, I think we are actually moving in the right direction with the new, strategy and plan in place. Thank you.
Any more questions, comments? Enough not. Are we all happy to note the paper? Good, thank you. So item 8 is the annual complaints report. I'm not sure if it's you or me to introduce that. Right. So Councillor Afilaka will introduce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think this report is brought here to allow the committee to review and comment on the decision of the local government ombudsman's public interest report. That's the first thing. And then also to give update on changes that is happening in terms of the complaints handling procedure. And it also gives us the report of the Kingston Council complaint handling performance and service improvement, which sets the tone for what we will be monitoring in the future. Yeah. Can I pass it on to Louis?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, just to reiterate what Councillor Afilakis said, there's a number of changes to how we are being asked to report complaints by the Ombudsman in the future. We will be required to publish a more detailed report into complaints, and that is part of the new measures the Ombudsman is asking us to take up. This year's is really a benchmark. It's required from 2026, but we are starting to put this in because we've always put an annual report. What we're doing is a little more detail, which reflects more closely what will be asked of us in the future. There are a number of annexes in here which also reflect the new procedures and guidance that the Ombudsman is asking us to follow as part of new processes being introduced. I think there's 7 annexes, so I apologise for that. But there are new policies coming forward. There is also included in here a public interest report relating to one of the findings of the local government and social care ombudsman, which we're required to publish in public. And I'm happy to take any questions.
The report asks us to consider the report alongside the annual complaints report and to note the contents and forthcoming changes and to note the annual letter for the local government and social care ombudsman annual letter at Annex C and the public interest report. I move that proposal on Councillor Afilakis. You happy to say? So I'll now open this to any questions or comment.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I would like to ask, I can see we have some benchmark versus other boroughs. Within Kingston, is there a way we can look at complaint by wards? A breakdown of finding root cause, is it something to do with the way things are escalated, the work of a local councillor or not? And could that be helpful in any way?
Thank you for that. I think it's going to be quite difficult, if I'm honest, to break it down by ward or by local councillor. We are able to break it down by subject, but we don't always collect the postcode or know the source or base of where a complainant may be. So I think that would be quite challenging, if I'm being honest. Yeah, sorry about that.
Just to add to what Louis said, this is something that we've been trying to look at, where we, segregate the stores and put them in ward. But because of lack of resources as a factor as well, it's not been possible. Not that we have not looked at that in the past, but this is something that we can also take away, because it will make it easier for us to digest the data. However, I'm not saying it is possible, but it's something that we are working on and it's not been fruitful yet. Thank you.
Councillor Bass.
Yeah, and I had a question, but I just just by ward, I'm not sure what benefit that would be, because it's not really it's not complaints against councillors, it's council services. So if it's waste services, it's going to cut across everything. I mean, if they're complaints against councillors, that'd be another thing. But anyway, I can't see how it would be useful. But I mean, other people might look at it in different ways. My question is about paragraph 19. So it seems like 1/3 of complaints aren't done in time. That doesn't sound so good. And the question is, what's being done to bring that percentage of ones that we do in time up? Because I think that might be quite frustrating for residents to wait that long.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. The figures are improving, but you're quite right. There is much more that we can do in that space, and I accept that. It will be skewed very slightly by the ICC numbers in there. They're high numbers. They aren't actually complaints. A lot of those are service queries, if you like. So they're not necessarily complaints. That will change as we go through, because those service complaints in that way will not be recorded like that. We will go straight to stage 1 or stage 2. There will be service comments, but they won't be ICCs. So what you will see reflected in the future is probably an increase in stage 1 complaints, because if they're recorded in that way, they will become a complaint automatically rather than a service request. If there's a request that can be done, that will be done immediately. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Our processes need to improve. We need to get better at handling complaints behind the scenes and working alongside services. That is a focus for the work over the next year.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
Just to follow up that, I'm not really quite sure I follow the explanation, because the ICC complaints are actually have a higher percentage in time. It's the stage 1 complaints are only 6% in time, and the stage 2 are only 61% in time. So we're not, you know, that's nearly 40% of the stage 1 and stage 2s aren't done in time. So I'm not sure how removing the ICCs is really going to help that. So the stage 1 and stage 2s, you know, not, you know, only 61% are done in time. Surely that is a concern.
Yeah, I didn't say it wasn't a concern. I agree it's a concern, and it's a piece of work that we will continue to do to make sure we're improving those numbers. Councillor Bass, you're right.
The point, sorry, the point I don't understand is, why will removing the ICCs improve the times of stage 1 and stage 2? I'm just a bit confused on that.
In the future, sorry.
I don't see how it make a difference. Okay.
Yeah, in the future, it'll be more realistic about the number of complaints rather than inquiries. So what you're getting in there is a lot of service requests and inquiries that may or may not be complaints. So it will make it a clearer measure of actual complaints in the future.
Yeah, I feel like Councillor Afilaki wants to come back, and I've got Councillor Whaley and Councillor Massamy.
So the ICC is the initial contact where, you know, resident contact us and officers respond. With the new ombudsman rule, that will be taken off. That's not our own remit. That's from the ombudsman. That's part of the code. Hence, the new process will be that, you know, our stage 1 will go via the ME, you know, and we will use the ME as our sort of our first, you know, point with our residents, and that will be the process now. However, why are the complaints targets not being met? I think a major reason would be the volume versus the resources that we have. And, you know, officers that handle complaints are often the one handling the members' inquiries as well. And so going back and forth, they are the one doing the members' inquiry as well as the operational rules. So the amount of evidence for the housing ombudsman asks for is becoming too much, taking into account that they need more time to resolve this. I think that's one of the reasons why that is. Another thing is that the complaints are majorly made about the policies, which, you know, we can't really do anything about. At that point of call, if it's a policy issue, there is nothing we can do. But still, residents don't understand that. So there's still a going back and forth, which at the end of the day extends, you know, the longevity of the period that we spend on this. But I think with the new structure that will be put there, the ombudsman is putting in place with the structure, it will make it clearer and more transparent.
Louise.
Yeah, I was just going to come back and just update on where we are to date this year on the performance levels, which are running now higher at just over 70% being resolved in time. So we are working to improve that and we'll continue to do that.
Councillor Vering, I think next.
Thank you, Chair. I want to sort of look at two parts of the reasons for complaints being unheld. In the pie there, you've got officer conduct behaviour, and you've also got poor/lack of communication. And I can't help feeling that that's something that councillors could help with, because I find a lot of the communications that I get sight of from the officer cohort to the resident could do with going through a ChatGPT filter of rewrite this so a 12-year-old could understand it, and just to take the councillese out of it. And I suppose what I'm trying to get to is, my point is that how does a local councillor know, or how are they informed of a stage 1 or stage 2 complaint from a resident in their ward? I'm only aware of one of them, and that's because the resident informed me. I just think it would be there's a skill set, for want of a better word, that councillors should have, of being able to take something from the council and deliver that to a resident in a way that can be understood way better, that would take out the complaint about officer conduct and behaviour, because we get both. We understand what both sides are trying to say to each other, or certainly I do after 6 years of doing it now. And I just would like to know, what role do councillors play when a complaint escalates to stage 1 and certainly stage 2, and could it be improved? Because I'd be horrified if there was a stage 1 or stage 2 complaint, and I'm sure there is in my ward, and I didn't know anything about it. And now I'm going to lose sleep about it.
I think that there's a number of points there. Undoubtedly, we must and should improve the communication. I do get that point, and sometimes, you know, there is a lot of work we could do there. I guess it will depend on the type of complaint. Because some of them, if they're about waste or universal things, it might be, you may be aware of, and we may be able to help you understand. If it is something around social care or something more sensitive, we may run into GDPR issues. So it is something that we'd have to think about, I think.
Yeah, I knew GDPR was going to come and hit that. But the way we get around it is replying to the resident and saying, "Are you okay with me putting you in touch with XYZ?" Once you get the okay from them. My point is that genuinely, I worry that the council doesn't look at the councillors as the asset they could be, particularly in this area.
And I think sometimes that councillors are copied into things. I think the number of complaints we get, a lot of them may be around missed bin collections, etc., which are relatively straightforward to resolve. So therefore, you know, it would add another dimension that doesn't possibly need to be there. Some of them will be technical. Some of them will be things that we can resolve relatively quickly, but our communications needs to be better. Let me think about that and come back to you on a way that councillors may or may not be involved, because I'm not sure it will always help you or the complainant. In some instances, undoubtedly it would, but in others it may just add another layer or become, you know, I know it's well intentioned, but we just need to think about it.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. The last thing you want when you've got a stage 1 or stage 2 complaint is someone else coming and going, right, what's going on here? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I think there's the germ of something here that could be worked up internally, that could have councillors a little bit more involved in the complaints process, that would iron out a fair chunk of the complaints that you're getting just by the nature of getting them involved and them going around and speaking to them and just getting a bit more information and then delivering the information in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew just said to me quite rightly, there is member inquiries route, so we may want to look at how we utilise that more effectively. But I think the other thing where members could really help is if we know there is a service issue emerging in a particular area, we can alert members and help with the communications around that. So there may be something we can do in that space. If we know a certain road in your area, it's not getting its bins picked up for some reason, and we know that's because there's cars parked down either side of the road or something, there is potentially something that we could do to help spread that information. And it means that you will also be cited on something that probably will come to you through members' inquiries as well.
Councillor Effelark wants to review too.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there is need for more communication, to tighten our communication, like Councillor Waring has said. What we have had till now is situations where residents complain directly to the council, hoping to get a positive response. And when they don't get that, they now come back to councillors. Sometimes they do, yeah. So what? Yeah.
If you want to
so
speak, can you put the microphone or wait until she's finished?
So my point is, you have a point in that we need to tighten communication, and with this new process, I think it's something that we have to look into doing, to have a loop where councillors are always mostly involved in whatever is happening with the residents, because at the end of the day, that's why councillors are there. However, in cases of GDPR and, you know, that it's fine, but I think there is work to be done around involving councillors, not at the last minute. Thank you.
Councillor Waring, did you want to respond? Councillor Waring, you want to? No. Councillor Massley.
No, I'm sorry. The data is right there. It's right there in the complaints that there are complaints that are raised about officers and lack of communication. And at the same time, there isn't a process that I'm aware of or that I've ever been contacted through from the council, from the officer cohort, that a complaint has escalated to stage 1 or even stage 2. And what I'm saying is that needs to be in place, and the offer needs to be made to the resident. And please stop using GDPR. I'm not asking you. That's an answer to a question I'm not asking. There is a way to get GDPR off out of the equation in a conversation by saying, "Are you okay if I put you in touch with?" But each time it's used too much, and I'm sorry, I'm offloading about GDPR far more generally than just specifically at you, but it's the last straw that broke the camel's back. There are ways and means, and we should look at ways and means, and it's very, very straightforward. And I use it every single day by asking the resident if they're okay with me putting them in contact, and we can do that. But I just genuinely think that the councillor cohort could be utilised to assist when complaints escalate an awful lot more than they are at the moment, which is, by the sound of it, 0.
Yeah, your comment is noted, and that will be worked on. However, like I said, based on the information that has been passed to me, this is something that we're already looking at in collaboration with the officers and what the Ombudsman's code has released to us. But definitely we'll be looking at that, because that will improve our service a lot. Thank you.
Next I have Councillor Masmi, then Councillor Bass.
Thank you, Chair. I echo a lot of what has been said tonight by my colleagues, and some have 6 years experience as councillor. I've got 25 years as customer experience. So I really, it's music to my ears. One of the statement or question that I would like to ask are, at the moment, we're looking at the numbers of complaints. We should tackle the issue of how can we prevent this from happening in the first place, by improving service, by having portfolio holders that are very proactive and very fast at responding to those complaints. We already get a lot of escalations from MPs, from officers at time, and from residents who come to us ultimately when they feel that they do not either get the answer or the response in a timely manner. I think there are a lot of things we can do and a lot of things that we need to adjust and improve. But all of the conversation we have had for the last 15 minutes goes back to what I've asked. If we do not have a way to go deep dive into the data and find out the root cause of the issue and the location, then maybe it's an issue with a third-party provider across an entire borough for, I would say, damage bin maybe, or the way they've been handled. Or maybe it's an issue with a specific councillor that do not set the right expectation and overpromise and underdeliver. Maybe it's an issue with a design regarding bin collections with vehicle bin blocking the road. But we need to be able to pinpoint and then really work around it. One of my questions on this is, we use a lot of third-party providers or outsourcers or contractors. Since we also have now a lot of complaints or some complaints, I understand that we should maybe look at implementing some penalties, and I keep saying this in the same way that you run a business. You have a contractors, if they fail to deliver on a service, on the quality that we expect, they should have penalties that are financial penalties that are paid back to the council as a failure of delivering on what we expect and what we have signed for. And I know it's challenging, but if we do not do this, they will have no interest in actually going above and beyond, because it's just going to be a tick box exercise. So I really want us to look at this and say, reward over performance and penalize the ones that are not able to pull their weight, not just by saying that they might lose the next RFP or request for proposal or whatever, but they might actually be financially impacted. We really need to be harder on those and expect them to deliver what they are expecting to deliver for the resident and the council. That's a question and a statement, sorry.
Louise?
Yeah, so what I would say is that we do have quite clear operational processes that we put in place with our contractors, and we do have standards that we ask them to meet. I think we do work quite hard with the contractors, and in here there is a code in the way that we must deal with contractors who basically residents don't see the difference. If it's a service that we provide through a contractor, it's the council. And that's how residents should see it. And that is in effect what is being said through the code that is in here. What we have done, and I would give waste as an example, you know, when we transferred to electronic vehicles, we had a lot of issues. So we worked quite extensively with them to resolve those issues. It is getting better. And actually, I would say waste has improved quite a lot when we look at the statistics in here. So what we would always do first and foremost is try and work with the contractors to find a way of resolving them before we resorted to penalties. I'm sure within contracts that we have, there are clauses that cover that. But I wouldn't like to see that as our first point of call. I would like us to be able to resolve things with them, working alongside them first and foremost, before we get into that stage. Undoubtedly, there is probably more that we can do to ensure that we are clear on the expectations. But I would use the waste contract as an example where there were some teething issues. They weren't great. They weren't great. And we didn't hold back in the conversations that we were having with contractors around expectations. So I take on board your point. Whether we will get to the point, I will have to speak to my colleagues in procurement.
Councillor Beth.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thanks for this report. Obviously, it's really relevant to us as councillors because we tend to get involved when the residents complain, because that's why they come to us. One thing that's a bit frustrating as a councillor, and it happens time and time again, I don't actually expect to be notified of every complaint in my ward, but I do expect to be notified when there are complaints that we've raised through the members' inquiries, and we never hear that it's resolved unless the resident tells us. You know, it'd be quite nice if we actually got the follow-up to know that, you know, because we raise it and, you know, we might happen to go past and we can see something's happened, or the resident will tell us, but we don't automatically get told. It's difficult. So that's a plea, please. And it's been raised before. It's quite difficult from this report to work out exactly what the type of complaints are that come under these, especially, I suppose, on the stage 2 ones. I mean, as you guys on the other side, the administration, I would think you'd particularly want to know what those are so that you can ensure that things are resolved. Maybe not all of you, but maybe as the lead member, do you get to see do you get to see actually what the individuals, I mean, there are 124 stage 2 complaints. Do you actually get to see what they are so you can see what the main issues are that people are complaining about? Or how do you assure yourself that that these are being you know, acted on so that you know, situations can be improved?
Yeah, thank you. Up until now, what we do is the officers collate the data and get the team around, you know, the major occurrences, what's happening, the challenges, and we have meetings around that. However, I think with the new ombudsman code, things will be changing, and I will be more involved based on what the ombudsman code has, you know, highlighted, which I think it's a positive.
I mean, just to follow up on that, is it something that we could have in the pink papers, like a summary of the, you know, the stage 2 complaints, so we know as councillors what exactly, you know, the complaints are that have gone to these sort of final stages, you know, so that we have that information. I mean, obviously anonymized.
I think that's an internal thing. And I believe that's part of what Oli is talking about, because if we are within the loop, or we are putting the loop of what's happening at each stage, then we will definitely know. So that's something that we'll take away and look into. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate this is the first time this paper's come to the board, so to the committee. So, you know, this is one of the reasons what we are sort of flapping around. I think it all goes back. We need to start with what's the aims and objectives of having this complaint process. And it needs to underpin a culture and ethos in Kingston Council that really serves residents who actually, at the end of the day, pay the council tax. And based on that, there should be a dashboard or a balanced scorecard whereby these things should be brought to councillors who are an important stakeholders, which goes back to the communication engagement, so that things are kept on radar. Most of the complaints so far that I've come to know is because I read it in the comment about the kids going hungry, or that mattress that was left in some river for months and months and months. And it's telling that there was 0% of cases where there was no effort to remedy the complaint until it went to the ombudsman. So anyway, so coming back, so we need a dashboard or a balanced scorecard which regularly informs major stakeholders, which councillors are, you know, part and parcel. And because there are a whole bunch of residents who are middle of the road, they don't even make a complaint. And similarly, okay, the GDPR is a get out clause, get out of jail clause. Equally, many of the opposition councillors are being pursued with complaints from officers and the CEO. So all that is not visible. Yes. I mean, I'm being pursued for harassment bullying because I raised a issue that was of
Councillor
close
Coon, I
to my
don't
heart.
think it's appropriate to be talking about
So
that
anyway,
in
so
this
I'm sort of
meeting.
saying
Please,
there's a complaint.
Please, Councillor Coon, would you just stop for a moment? I'd like you to withdraw that comment.
What is that?
You have, no, we're not here to discuss your personal position. We're
No,
discussing the
so
issues
we are
on
talking
the
about
agenda.
complaints.
Can we just stop on that now, please?
No, I don't say officer. So we're talking about complaints, and I'm sort of saying there are different degrees of complaints. And when a member sees something and it's not being resolved, and if they raise it with a little bit of gusto, then they are battered down, a bit like GDPR.
Councillor Coon, we're back onto the same issue here. This is a paper about.
Yeah, so I'm not about complaints.
Let me finish, please. This is a paper about the formal complaints handling processes for the council. It is not about the specific issues that you're raising. Please stick to the subject of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We'll go back. This is about complaints. Residents not getting the service that they should expect in this day and age. So there should be a dashboard. There should be a stakeholder communication plan, which we don't have to read it in the comment. We should be proactively told. There's like an iceberg. There are things between, below the surface that we don't even know about. And as I said, it's zero effort. You said that, but did you ask about a dashboard? No, a dashboard of complaints so that we regularly see as part of a regular reporting. But this is after the event. I'm saying in near regularly, so we don't have to wait till it's gone to state. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Councillor Coon, this is the annual review of the formal complaints process. All organisations have a formal system for recording complaints.
Fine.
And that's an important part of information.
But I'm
it's
saying.
not all about the specifics here. So have you reached the end of your question?
So, okay, so I'm sort of saying, like, councillors, we could raise complaints because there's lots of issues on the members' inquiries which have not been tackled, but we are not. I mean, they're not being dealt by the council on behalf of our residents.
Councillor Coon, again, we're on the formal, please. Gentlemen, please, let me finish. I'm chairing the meeting. One chair at a time. Have you finished your question? Because I think we've
Okay,
got the
so
gist
we
of
need
it
to
now.
be more clear about what the aims and objectives of this, having this paper coming to us. And it shouldn't be just something that goes to the ombudsman and it only comes on radar because it went to the ombudsman. I'm sort of saying there are other issues which are in the pipeline, but they're not visible. And I'm sort of saying there should be a more proactive in-near reporting of the stuff which could potentially become, so that we don't get into the stage there are zero satisfactory remedies before they get to the ombudsman. Thank you for your time. So what? I can repeat it again. I've got my own,
Yes,
I need to
thank you,
speak.
Councillor Coon. We understand. So, do you want to come back on that, Louise?
Yeah, so what I would say is the complaints that are in here aren't all ones that have been to the Ombudsman. They are a performance report of complaints and how they're being handled. It is a regular thing that comes here. I'd also just like to say on the compliance with Ombudsman complaints that you were talking about there with 0% being upheld, I think we need to put that into the context that Kingston performs particularly above average in this area. So 69% of our complaints were upheld compared to 85% in other organisations. So we are doing things to try and resolve things before they get to the Ombudsman. And there's a lot of hard work that is reflected in these reports that I hope demonstrates that.
Councillor Effiong.
Thank you. Just to reiterate what Louisa said, Kingston has a good reputation with the Ombudsman. The last annual report, we had only 9 out of like 30 something, which was upheld. And we are one of the council, we still have room for improvement, but we are one of the councils that actually are doing well in terms of, you know, how we handle our complaints. In terms of this new code, we are giving ourselves a year to pilot this because this is not starting yet. And while we are doing this, it's to kick it off so that we can pick up the challenges, have a look at what can be amended and what we really want to get out of this. So other councils have started as well, but we are kicking this off so that we can pilot it and ensure that we put our house in order before the ombudsman actually goes, live. It will also help us to navigate through the changes that have been made, and, you know, the response time will be a major issue, the first stage. But once we try it out, I think that will give us a better chance to know how to navigate through this. Thank you.
Councillor Aspie.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I see that it's a passionate debate tonight. I personally am very pleased to see a report of this quality and all the detail that comes out of it. There are always things we need to improve and we have to improve. But I see complaint as an opportunity. I see this as a chance for us to listen, adjust, and basically be closer to a resident lack of understanding sometime or concern or issues. This is an opportunity for us to get better. So please send your complaint to your councillor, complain to your MP, who will ultimately going back to us because it's local issue. And this is why we're here for. As a councillor, if we are not able to get those complaints to us, or as a result sometime of some delay in getting a response, then maybe we need to do something else. But I invite my resident to complain. Don't tell me what's right. I mean, I am a resident myself. Tell me what we can do better. So please keep complaining. It's constructive as long as we learn from it. We analyze the data and we keep improving. That's what matters. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. And it's an opportunity.
Thanks. Chair gets the last go, I guess. This is a paper about the formal complaint system, not about questions and queries coming from residents. And it's absolutely essential that we have a formal complaint system. All organisations have them, all public services organisations, and they all have a degree of formality about them. And it's important that we provide oversight of that formality. The day-to-day discussions between councillors, officers, I would describe as queries and questions rather than formal complaints. We don't get very many of those. Personally, I also recognise that once it goes into the complaint system, it's much more difficult for me to know what's going on. Sources close to the chair of the audit committee have asked me whether this paper will be going to the audit committee at some point. I can't remember if it does or not, Louise. It's the sort of thing that you might think would.
I don't believe it does currently, but one of the recommendations in the paper is that it could go in the future.
Be helpful. So just a reminder that we are here to consider the report and to note the local government and social care ombudsman annual letter. We've had a good debate. Is everyone happy to do that? Councillor Bass.
I just, having sat on the audit committee for many years, I think it would have benefit going to the audit committee if it had sufficient detail that it could highlight risks. Because unless it's actually going to do that, I don't know it's really going to add any benefit to the audit committee, because I think we could then review it in line with the risk register and it would point out if we'd missed a risk. That would be the main benefit, I think.
That makes sense. So we're happy. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I just had one comment. Well, it's been quite an interesting day, hasn't it? On line 54 and 55, we have also made the following improvements as below. My reservation of that, Louise, that feels a bit generic. That's probably something I'd probably put in the report back in the day. Going forward, can we actually have some real live examples of things we've changed and amended, such as changing terms, conditions of certain things? I think it just gives it more credibility. Otherwise, there's a danger it sounds a little bit, well, almost sort of aspirational rather than our residents want to see something's happened on the ground, like we've amended the bin collection to certain times, that sort of stuff. It's real, real stuff that really impacts on people's lives. I think that will give certainly us as members a lot more confidence in stuff that's been dealt with, and there's some real live examples of where we've listened, where we've assessed, and where we've changed something. Thank you.
Happy? On that basis, are we all happy? Agreed to note. Good, thank you. So we move on to the last substantive item, which is revitalising Kingston's ancient marketplace operator appointment. And just turn myself off. Just a reminder that this is a discussion that we would like to have in public, but there is exempt information associated with this item. Should a member feel that they are unable to debate the issue without specific reference to the figures in this exempt material, or indeed to much of the detail, you will need to indicate this prior to speaking, and then we'll put to the meeting whether or not we wish to go into a private session. It'd be great if we don't need to, but we may have to. So, just a reminder of where we are on this. The marketplace and the Grade 2 listed market house is a unique part of Kingston Town Centre. Has roots in the town's origins, but it's still a major part in Kingston's modern day appeal. The street market is one of London's oldest. First recorded on the site in 1242, about 20 to 1, and it still operates under its royal charters. However, while it remains very popular, there is a clear potential for it to do so much more to support the council's vision for the town. In March 2024, we considered and ultimately approved a new strategy for the market built around the curation of the three component parts: the marketplace, the market house, and the street market, under a long-term management arrangement, seeking to diversify the offer and trading hours, support a programme of events and activities, and of course give new life to the market house, which has lain dormant for some years. This exciting report, I described it twice as a startling report, details the work done since March to advertise this unique opportunity, which has attracted interest from an impressive array of operators with a depth of experience and clarity of vision, which should make us all impatient for the future. This is market sensitive. Much of the detail is exempt. We can discuss it, as I said, if we go into private session. However, the public report details the process which the council has followed, the criteria which has been used, and the assessment which has been completed to conclude on a recommended preferred bidder. Their proposal, which scored the highest of all of the quality criteria, is provided as an exempt annex, and we can see how well they've responded to our vision with a revitalised market, which flexes through the week and individual seasons and introduces new traders alongside the existing offer. The vision for the reuse of the market house will see it playing a central part in Kingston life again, supporting the street market while hosting a range of community and cultural events. If this is approved, the recommendations will confirm the status of the preferred bidder, and the delegation sought will allow the completion of the remaining commercial negotiations. And just to remind you that we need to have this in place by the 1st of April next year when the existing contract ends. And so we need to have most of the detail finalised in January. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Matthew? So let's see if we're probably best to go. Shall we? We'll move the recommendations at the front of the report, then go into the discussion. So I move the recommendations. Councillor Afilaki, you have to second. Good. Okay. Open for debate. Councillor Massimi.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to see that we might have a new lease of life and some refresh and more vibrant market square in Kingston. My question is probably ahead of the deadline for this coming year. I would like to ask officers if they can help me to understand if, as part of the agreement, whomever we might decide to go with, there are some condition attached to the obvious one that you expect from me is kind of performance indicators in terms of delivery and a breakout clause in terms of failing to obviously fulfill those. But more importantly, I see this as a real asset for community, for various group and associations. And I would like to know if we could, if not already done, are the conditions to have a certain number of time, maybe 20, 25 days per year, with enough notice given to the future operator of the market, or at no cost, the various groups to use the market square, like we've been doing for the ECA festival, for various dance competitions, for other cultural events. I would be very uncomfortable, if I may say, to know that we are potentially going to grant a lease for a large number of years to an operators, and then we will have to sublet or actually pay what might be substantial for some of those groups, an additional fee when this is really a council asset. So could we retain that flexibility within reason to make sure that we keep a certain amount of days for the general community to be able to use at no cost the market, which ultimately will have a ripple effect on the trading of the market as well as the brand image. But we really need to think about it rather than just thinking about we will then have to sublet or pay a fee to this future provider or operator. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the question. So in terms of the initial point on KPIs, yes, we do anticipate there being a suite of KPIs around quality and performance, and they'll be built into the agreement with the provider. And obviously failure to meet those will require a series of responses, so which we'll monitor and ensure happen. And in the event that they don't, ultimately they'll become a reason for termination of the agreement, which is quite a sledgehammer, but clearly will incentivize the operator we expect to respond. I would say in the discussion we had with them so far, the preferred operator, they've put forward KPIs that are probably beyond where we thought we would be, and their attitude towards quality is very, very encouraging, and the sorts of things they want to be measured against should give us some assurance. The point on access is a really interesting one. So we are, as you say, anticipating a lease agreement with an operating agreement or similar sitting alongside it, precise titling to be sorted out. We haven't carved out specific days. And I wouldn't intend to. The discussions with them and the agreement we're seeking to reach with them is very much around public accessibility within that space. So I can reassure you there won't be any overt privatization of the space. We're asking them to operate it on behalf of us. So their vision, as articulated in the document that you've got as one of the exempt annexes, very clearly talked about a whole range of events, including quite a large range of free to access and much more community focused bits and pieces, particularly around the market house, which is one of the things that we really did want to secure something more imaginative for. So if I'm honest, I think we're looking at it as more, whilst there will be a formality through the lease and the operating agreement, it's a partnership. It's a long-term relationship we're looking to forge here. And so the initial conversations we had with them are very encouraging that they want to provide for that, because as you say, what they see ultimately is footfall drives business drives spend. So I think, so in our direct answer to the question, no, we're not seeking to carve out a set number of days. But I think the activity mix that they've got within their proposal, which of course we'll have to hold them to, and the KPIs will help us do some of that, should give us reassurance that a lot of the events that you list, which at the moment I don't think do happen in the market square, but actually I don't think we're excluding that opportunity by virtue of the agreement we're seeking to strike.
Thank you for this clarification. It's good to hear, but I'm still, I sleep much better when I know that there is at least a minimum requirement for them to deliver on a certain set of days, which could be a minimum of 20 or a minimum of XYZ, rather than just a wider, we will grant access to the public, because there is a fine line and how it can be interpreted is always a challenge. So I think, there should be a kind of a baseline, in my view, that would be my recommendation. The other suggestions, if I may, I know that we have with John Lewis, for example, a business model, which means that when they over-deliver or when things are going pretty well for them, we actually have a kind of a revenue sharing kickback. Is there some mechanism in place if that market was to turn to be a huge, hopefully, magnet attractions and actually making a killing in revenue? What about having a share when business and when partners are actually doing extremely well? Is not something that we can potentially consider?
So I'll talk in general terms, but I mean, that is specifically covered in the paper and the annexes. So part of our ask out to operators was on an expectation of a commercial offer where there was a floor rental paid to us, so a minimum rental we would get. and then with a 10% revenue share. And that's what we put out to the market. We've obviously had responses back in respect to that, which I can't talk about in specifics, but you will see from the exempt annex that essentially we have all the bidders have come back broadly in line with that proposal. And I'm going to stop there while we're in public.
Any more questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bass.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. As a regular user of the marketplace, I'm delighted that it's being looked at and to improve. And I think bringing the market house into kind of the bigger picture of the marketplace is a really sensible thing. I do think, I mean, apart from the general tidiness and where you eat and all of that, you know, it can be a lot improved. But I think when you look at a lot of other markets, the actual offering of the stalls we have is really high quality, and they're not sort of just brands that are rolled out over everywhere that you quite often see in markets. They're kind of like homegrown ones, you know, that are really high quality. And one or two of those market stalls I know are the draw of why people will go down regularly to market. I mean, for example, like the bread stall, you know, people go down once or twice a week to just for that. And then if you've got a draw like that, it means that they go in the other market stalls and other things in Kingston as well. So my question is, not to get obviously into any specifics, but what assurance we have at councillors that they wouldn't kind of evict these smaller stall holders to have kind of bigger scale ones that perhaps do the same in every other marketplace and lower the quality that we have there? You know, that some of those stall holders have been there for 10, 20 years. So what assurance do we have that they're not moved on? And shall I ask all my questions first, or do you want to answer that one first?
Was that your second question? Keep going, Marion.
Okay, I'll ask them all. So the first one is assurance about the stall holders, how they would hopefully retain. Second one is obviously the marketplace was done a while ago and it's looking a bit tired. So who would have the responsibility for this design and refurb of that when that happens? And then my third point is, I suppose, following on from what Councillor Messina was saying, is about the KPIs which you mentioned, but the break clause really, because 25 years is a very long time, certainly a lot longer than we ever granted to Kingston first when the bid ran this. So if we're not happy with what they're doing, what break could we have? Because 25 years is quite a long time to be stuck with something that perhaps doesn't work out how we want.
And I'm not telling you off, but can we just try and make sure we're talking about stuff that's in the public paper while we're in public? So I'm not sure that length of lease was disclosed in the public report. But yeah.
I think it is important that we try to stay in public if we can. It's just so important. So
but I mean, I can absolutely respond to the general bit. That's no problem, and I will do that. But I just want to remind all members, yeah, you are in public session, and we can't really refer to the private stuff. The assurance point is really interesting. I mean, clearly I can't sit here today and say over the lifetime of the agreement that every single stall will stay in exactly the same incarnation that it is now. And indeed, there'll be 101 reasons why we wouldn't want to do that anyway. I think the really interesting thing that we got back from all of the operators is actually they're really excited by the mix of uses we've got there now. They see huge strengths both in the food offer, but also the hot food offer and the cold food offer. And it is quite unusual, I suppose, in the London context. You now see quite a lot of hot food pop-ups and various other bits and pieces. You know, you don't often see them with the sort of the grocery element, if you like, alongside. And all the operators who've come in all saw that as a real strength and wanted to encourage that and expand it. They have all fed back to us. They have some concerns over the repetition of some of the offerings. So obviously we've got some stalls that are all very similar in terms of what they offer. So they do want to perhaps curate that a bit more strongly and look actually at how we provide perhaps a broader offer by driving out some of the duplication in favour of actually allowing then space for other things to come in around it. So I can't say it'll always be the same, but I do think some of the ones you've specifically referenced there are recognised as real strengths on the market, and from the operator perspective coming in, I can't talk for them, but the discussions we've had with them very clearly are gearing that there's those that they see real strengths there. The KPIs we're talking about include the breadth of offer and the generality of offer, and indeed the local sourcing of those suppliers as well. So we've scored heavily on social value. One of the social value elements was around actually supporting local business, supporting local entrepreneurs. So again, for your homegrown bit, I think we will have teeth there that we can bear if we want to. The general condition and the refurbishment, yes, in going out, we made it clear to all potential interested parties that over the lifetime of the agreement, we absolutely expect there to need to be a reinvestment and refurbishment. The physical stalls, the wooden stalls have been there. They're now past their design life. We have reinvested in them continuously as we go. But I think it's not exactly an open secret. It's not exactly a secret, is it, that there are challenges and the operators do face issues as a result of that. All the bidders have brought forward proposals for an investment programme over the first few years of the lease to a greater or less extent. Obviously, all had their view of how much that would be and what they would input into that. And we have made it clear that the council has a line in its capital budget, as we've always had, to help support that. And you can see in the confidential items actually the sorts of sums that are involved that all the bidders have put forward. And essentially, instead of who would lead it, we would look to them to lead it. We really are looking to bring someone in for their expertise, for their vision, for their creativity, which I'm not saying doesn't exist within the council, but is not our day job, generally speaking. We've gone out for a partner here who actually can do the things that we cannot, or can do them better than we could. So I think it's really important they lead, but of course it will all be, any physical changes will require planning consent. Anything around the house is going to require listed building consent. So it's not as if we're not we're not without our controls. And as I said to Councillor Massimi, it's a partnership. So we would absolutely expect to be having a discussion with them about what form that refurbishment or redevelopment or whatever it might be took prior to it going into the planning process. The KPIs and the break clause. So yes, you'll see that it is a much longer term agreement. I think one of the we have to be very grateful to Kingston first. They helped the council out, I think, by taking it on. The council spent quite some time thinking about what it wanted to do, and in that time they had a series of rolling 1-year leases. What were they ever going to be able to do from an investment perspective under that arrangement? Not much. So they've been very able custodians in that time, but by their own admission, I think they would agree that they haven't reinvested in it because how could they? One of the whole reasons for going for a longer term relationship is, of course, because it brings that investment, it brings that opportunity to do the stuff that we haven't been able to do. But yes, of course, it does then have a trade-off there that you are in a much longer term relationship with someone. The KPIs and the nature of the operating agreement are things that will keep us honest with each other in terms of the operator and the council as the ultimate owner, landlord, whatever you want to call us. And the ongoing management of that relationship is outlined in the public bit of the report. We will put in place, or we've already put in place, a new structure to help us hold that discussion over what will be an extended period of time, so that we can make corrections, we can make interventions where we feel they're needed. There will be a break. I think that is in the confidential papers. There is anticipated to be a break partway through that lease agreement. And as I've already said to Councillor Massimi, ultimately, if all the KPIs, or not all, if we're not seeing satisfactory performance against those KPIs and our requests for remedies and improvements aren't being heeded, then ultimately there will be a break linked to performance within the lease as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Really comprehensive. And sorry, I didn't read it. So I think this is really exciting. I feel quite passionate about this because I think, as a regular user, I think our Kingston market is really quite exceptional. It's one of the best, but it could be so much better. Where you eat is really quite grotty and it can be quite dirty, especially if you're down shopping on a Sunday morning, where you compare that to some of the privately owned shopping centres where it's always clean. So it could improve a lot. Just one question. Another comment. Well, one comment and one question. So about the not having competing ones, and maybe that they may be referring to the fruit and veg stalls. I think sometimes a bit of competition is quite good. So hopefully it's quite good to have some repetition on things that are often used. And just to clarify, so one question, with the refurb, would the operator be responsible for putting in the capital funding, or does that come to the council?
So it's covered in the conflict of analysis, but essentially what we're proposing, so all the operators, as a general point, all the operators have made a proposal of a sum of capital investment they would look to make alongside council investment. So we have held for some time, I can't remember the exact figure, it's over £1 million, but don't ask me the exact figure, I can't remember it, in terms of works that we anticipate are needed on the market house. And what we've said to all the operators we've gone out as we have that budget, we have the flexibility to work with them to apply that over a program that we jointly agree, but our expectation absolutely is that we are not the sole funder of that. We said to all the bidders, what are you going to put in? It's a great opportunity, fantastic market, brilliant, brilliant commercial interest from them. Great. How much is it worth to you, effectively, is what we've asked.
Any more questions, comments? Councillor Coogan.
Thank you for that. Just a couple of questions. Instead of having a loan clause that can be broken via a KPI, can we not have extend it instead? I have it. Why is one doing a different period to the rest? That's number one. Number two, when we look at
Councillor Coogan, I fear that you're straying into the confidential.
Okay, as I said, I'm not mentioning any figures. All I'm sort of saying is one appears to be an outlier compared to the others, number one. Number two, I see, for example, Camden market has got 4.6 stars, whereas when you look at Kingston, it's got 4 stars currently. So what kind of incentives will there be if they're given a long period, a long lease, that can be only broken via a KPI exercise as opposed to, being extended should they do well? So those are the 2 points I have to make. Thank you.
I think.
Yeah, so, I'll deal with the generality of the first point first. The council put out a request, if you like. So we said we've got an opportunity here, and we set out a few benchmark expectations, but it's a lease negotiation, not a procurement. So we were able to say to people, you tell us, you make us an offer effectively. So the baseline bits we put in were we expect to be a lease arrangement with a minimum life is what we said of 10 years. We expect there to be a minimum rental of £100,000 a year or 10% of turnover, to Councillor Seamy's point. That's what we've said publicly, that's out there, that's been put out to all the bidders. And what they've come back with then is their approach. Now, of course, there'll be trade-offs in that. You have some who, some firms may well have looked at it and thought, well, 10 years is too short, we want a bit longer, but in return, we know we'll be trading for longer, therefore we think we could leverage a bit more money and put more in as a capital investment. And we've had to score those in a way that's consistent, such that actually we can make a decision. And that's obviously in the pink papers for you at the moment. The bit around then what happens at the end of that, however long it ultimately is, of course, is another conversation. I think we've got whichever bidder we ultimately select, although you have got recommended for a preferred, they're all long-term relationships. And I think what we've been very careful to say is that, we're not looking necessarily to provide people with security of tenure, because that will give us other challenges. So it will have to be a separate conversation at the end of that period. But the truth of it is, if we get to the end of, or getting on towards the end, and what we've got is a great partnership with an operator who really gets us and has put something fantastic in the middle of Kingston, there's absolutely nothing to stop the council of today having a chat with them and extending that agreement whenever they like. Frankly, it's a lease. It's not a procured contract. It's a property deal. So you have greater flexibility around that than you would if it was a procured contract.
Any more questions? Please, Councillor Carr.
Good evening. Thank you. So my question is, in relation to the leases that are being offered, will there be provisions for rent review? And if so, at what stages? And the other question is, I can't see in the paper that we've got the exempt Annex 1, but did the council, do they have an idea as to what kind of return on investment these companies are expecting to make? And if that's something that can be shared with us, as maybe it's exempt, but it'd be interesting to know what to see, exactly what they're looking to get out of it as well. And I suppose not profit shouldn't be purely the driving factor. So was there some kind of evaluation done on what these companies are expecting to make on what they invest?
So I'll probably do the second bit first. So the report does detail the assessment we've done, and the overwhelming scoring criteria is around quality, not commercial. So the majority of the marks, if you like, in terms of how we've had to assess the different bidders, has been about the quality of their offer, which has been about their vision, their experience and capacity and skills base, social value. So a rounded assessment of the pitch that they've made, and obviously you've got the preferred bidder's pitch in the exempt documentation. The commercial point, yes, so they have given us some financial projections, but they're projections. They don't run the market yet. We've given them the trading figures as best as we can from Kingston First, so they've had what Kingston First were comfortable providing, and they've made some estimates off of that, and they've shown us that, and that's what's given rise to the figures that you see in the exempt papers in respect of the indicative amounts that we might get under any revenue share agreement. So yes, we have seen that. In terms of rent reviews, yes, there will be some form of review, but to Councillor Simi's point, I think as the relationship progresses, it's going to be less and less we would expect about the floor rent figure. It's going to be more and more about the revenue share, and that of course will grow. The total percentage will stay the same, but of course, as revenues grow, you'd expect our financial return to increase.
So I suppose the aim is, with the investment they'll be making, they will increase, the revenue will increase for these companies, and in turn, the council will get more as a share.
Yes, I mean, we're talking to a commercial partner. So there's no point really for them just turning up and doing what we've got now. And I think the exciting thing about all of the offers that we had in was they all saw the potential to do more than we've got. The market has stayed largely in that form for what? Those of you who've been around here far longer than me. Well, I'd say the 10 years, it was reinvested in about 10 years ago, and it hasn't substantially changed since then. So whilst it has the potential to do pop-up bits and pieces, it hasn't really. All the bidders, to a great lesser extent, saw the opportunity to do more. One of the things we've liked particularly about the preferred bidder is, of course, they've actually been able to say, and this is what it's going to be, and this is where we do it elsewhere. And that's compelling for us, because actually it chimes with a lot of the vision stuff that this committee agreed back in March, I think it was, of this year. And it does talk about the ability to flex that market offer, have something different, broader at weekends, scale it back for the week, recognizing that footfall is different, but also the purpose of people being in town is different. Really work the seasonal offer and the school holiday offer, which at the moment we don't do. Our summer offer in the Kingston market is we turn the fountain on. It's a lovely fountain, but we don't do much else. Carnival provides a really interesting space and a really interesting draw, but actually it doesn't necessarily hugely benefit the market as it is today. And then the Christmas market comes in as it is there now, which is absolutely fantastic, and we all love it. But again, it's an adjunct to what's there. It's not necessarily flexing and supporting the existing traders. I don't think, I should speak for it now, so I won't say that. So what we've got here is someone who's really looked at it, seen the opportunities to grow it. So yes, their idea is actually what you're likely to see is during the week, something that looks not dissimilar to what's there now. And depending on weekends and seasons, actually could be something bigger, could be themed, could have speciality elements to it, which I think, if you look at the public feedback that's in one of the other annexes here, is what the public are absolutely crying out for.
Any more, or should we go to a vote?
Question for the officer, if I might, is probably my lack of understanding how the leases work, and it's following on from Councillor Messina's point about the ability for other groups to use it. And maybe if I just give a couple of examples might kind of reassure me. So say, for example, recently Kingston Hospital did I think it was a 5-mile walk or whatever to raise charity, and that was all set off. So it all started and ended in the marketplace. And there are lots of other kind of community events like that, which wouldn't necessarily be linked up to what the council's doing or what the market's doing generally. I mean, that was after hours. but would those still be able to happen, or under the lease, do they then have to agree with whoever takes on the lease to do that and perhaps pay, or will it still be free because it's our council asset? I'm just trying to understand what the answer is you gave to Councillor Massini, and that would really help.
So I think the reality is, under a lease agreement, we are introducing another party who we'll have to have a discussion with. That's the reality of it. But I genuinely don't see there's any real risk of them turning around to an event such as that example that you give, saying, and now you've got to pay us to start and finish here. I just don't, you've got to think this is a market operator. What they want is they want events to start and finish there because they want to grab people when they're there and they want to hold them there for as long as they can. So there is a practical commercial reality to this, which will override, I think, a lot of the concerns you're talking about. I think where we might have to do a bit more work is actually when we start looking at what that, in year one, I don't think we'll see radical change from what's there. But I think where we will have to do a lot of work, that's why I describe it as a very open partnership, is actually as it grows and we start, maybe they do start introducing themed markets at weekends or whatever, we're going to be a victim of our own success. There, we're going to have to work together to actually program stuff in and schedule it in. And that's a much bigger piece of work, as Louis nodding next to me, that we're talking about the cultural programming of Kingston Town Centre as a whole, of which the market square and the market itself will be but one component. And then we've got a whole load of other assets across the town that we want to see programmed in the same way, so that when you come to Kingston, there's always something going on. The market's brilliant. It's an absolutely fantastic focal point. It's not the only good bit of the town centre we've got to play with. So I do think we need to look at the breadth of these offers and think about how they all collectively add to something that's great.
So I suppose I think on the example I gave wouldn't have any commercial benefit for the marketplace because it started very late at night, so it was all shut up. But I suppose if the council, I suppose my question is if the council felt that something had merit to happen in the marketplace, would we still be allowed to have that really without pay, or are we losing control over it?
With respect to you, I think I've already answered this point as far as I can. I don't think there's any more I can say.
Any more questions?
It's not a question. It's me. It's not a question. It's just a little bit of 30 seconds, if I may. Thank you. Timing now. As a resident, I mean, I can go back to this market 60 years ago because I'm 65 and my cognizant ability goes back to 5 years of age. I mean, this is what we're doing here actually is we have a responsible legacy here. We have to be responsible on it. As Chair says, it goes back to 1242. From 1242, it has evolved. It's a vibrant space during those periods of time. It's got a certain historical charm. You see, I've been making my notes here. It's a great destination. It's a great, we just got to look after it, which is exactly what this paper does. I mean, it's a full factual statement, and I think it's wonderful to see that we're moving forward and being diligent as a committee on something which is so important to Kingston and to London. So it's a really positive mood.
Shall we go to a vote?
Yeah, very, very briefly. Without going back to the length of the lease yet again, I know the preferred bidder, basically, there's sort of three individuals who's got the majority stake in it.
Councillor Goon, you're getting awfully close to the detail.
Okay. So all I'm sort of saying, do we want 165 or 170,000 or whatever population of Kingston for the next X number of years to be under the vision of a handful of people? That's all. Thank you.
We have lots of commercial businesses in Kingston. Do we want John Lewis to have a big shop here?
True, but this is the this is the heart of Kingston marketplace. I'm just saying it's something that to throw into the mix. Thank you.
I think we can probably resolve that by going to a vote. I will, if I may, read out exactly what we're resolving to do because it's very important. So we're being asked to resolve that the marketing assessment and scoring process used processes used to identify and select a preferred operator for the ancient market square, market house and street market be noted. Based upon the assessment outlined within the report, the appointment of the preferred bidder identified in the exempt annex should be approved. The principle of granting a lease in respect of the site, which is edged red on the plan in Annex 2, comprising the ancient market square, market house and the street market contained therein, be granted to the preferred bidder on the terms outlined in the exempt annex. And delegated authority be granted to the Executive Director Place in consultation with the portfolio holders for economic development and leisure and for assets to negotiate, finalise and enter into the lease and associated documents necessary to secure the operation of the market from 1st April 2025 on terms broadly in line with the principles outlined in this report. Are we happy to agree that unanimously? Go to a vote? Certainly. All those voting in favour? Oh, and me.
8 in favour, Chair.
Against? Abstaining? 2 abstentions. Thank you. Right, so that concludes the last substantive item. We have no urgent matters to discuss, so I declare the meeting closed at 9:30.
Can I just say something?
I've just closed the meeting, Councillor Coogan.
But it's to do with the corporate resources.
No, I'm sorry, we've closed the meeting. Thank you.